G'day Valueoholics. Today we'd like to have a bit of a chat about the trust me money economy, the average person and the unavoidable truths. This is something I wish I knew many years ago. I think it would have helped me greatly in my thinking, the way I looked at the world, just to help put a lot of things in perspective that we see day to day. So hang around. I think it'll be well worth the effort, the time, and hopefully I can give you guys something that's valuable for your life as well. I think monetary policy, even though it's a dry topic, is something that everyone needs to have a basic understanding of, and that actually allow you to put quite a few different building blocks in place and take away a lot of the worry about certain things that we see and hear every day. So I think the drift, understanding a little bit about the drift of monetary policy is important. The broad changes in monetary policy in Australia post-war can be split into 4 main phases, so don't want to bore people to death, just go quickly through this stuff. So the fixed exchange rate period, which lasted until the early 1970s. Then there was a period after that of monetary targeting from 1976 to 1985, followed along by a transitional period which followed the demise of the monetary targeting that lasted up until the early 90s, and then an inflationary targeting regime which lasted up until the 1993 or thereabouts. So in Australia, the changes between regimes tend to be evolutionary and sort of hard to pinpoint a precise date. So that's just a bit of a background, just to show that's actually been quite a rapid evolution of monetary policy, and that affects our life and how we actually should be thinking about our financial life. So I like to call our current monetary system the trust me money economy. So prior to late 1970, the value of money was underpinned by physical assets such as gold or silver, and that was called the commodity money. So you actually had a physical asset attached to the value of the currency. So a fiat currency is legal tender which has value backed by the government that issued it. So this is what I like to call the trust me money economy. So there's actually no physical assets behind it, but it's more a trust in the government that issues the notes. So the US dollar is a fiat currency, and so is the Australian currency. They're effectively linked to the American dollar. Australia is. Australian currency is not backed by gold anymore, just to make that clear. Pretty much 99% of all currencies in the world now, doesn't matter where you go, they're fiat currency. So it's not confined to Australia or US. It's a global thing. So there are some challenges or things that you need to understand about the fiat monetary system. So to boil most things down to the simplest type of concepts, pretty much the reality in the 21st century is that if you're not an investor, you have some money invested in different things to generate income. Financially, you're almost certainly destined to be a part of the struggling lower to middle classes. So the importance of being invested in the current economic system is centered around debt, as the debt is the actual main driver of the fiat monetary system. So we can live in a fiat monetary system. We just have to understand a few of the key considerations to keep in the back of our mind. So as I briefly mentioned before, the fiat monetary system is built on debt and the inevitable cycles that brings. So we constantly see cycles where people, countries, companies take on too much debt, and another way of saying that is they have a high level of leverage. So eventually the entity is crushed by the weight of that debt. If that's a country, then there's a crash. And another way of saying that is it's a deleveraging event. So in my mind, the key to surviving and prospering in a debt-based monetary system is to use debt to buy assets that appreciate in value or produce income. So if you're buying crap like clothes all the time, if you're buying expensive TVs, if you're using debt to buy cars, boats, motorbikes, all that type of shit, then you're really putting yourself in a position for pretty much economic ruin almost. So it's one of those things that you need to be quite aware of. So we need to look at surviving the fiat monetary debt trap. So importantly, don't overestimate your capacity to pay the interest or the loan back in the worst case scenario. So you need to actually make sure you've actually physically had that financial capacity. I mean, the big thing is if you're on the wrong side of the good debt, bad debt equation, you'll be crushed, because those assets like a car, if you're taking a loan out for a car and things like that, they depreciate, so they're not worth anything in a debt in a crisis. So you can't sell it and or at least pay some of the principal back, because those things aren't worth anything. I think it's a good exercise for people to spend 20 minutes, I did anyway, to watch Ray Dalio's video called How the Economic Machine Works. I'll put a link or a little card in the video or in the description, so you can actually find that quite rapidly and have a look at it. It's very, pretty much it sets everything out in plain language and shows you the cycles, so how things are set up in the machine. So I don't see the economy as being scary. It's made out to be scary a lot of times. To sell newspapers and for people to constantly panic and do silly things. So understanding the mechanics behind the machine, I think it's quite valuable for the average person, and takes away some of the doubt that people have in their minds about what's coming, because you can kind of understand the broader cycles and what potentially could be coming. So then you can set yourself up a bit better and have your investments and things set up to actually take into account those type of situations. I mean, for me, the huge thing, the takeaway that I've come to realize in the last sort of 5 to 10 years, and more specifically in the last 2 to 3, is you need to be constantly educating yourself. I think the average person is under the illusion that their education finishes when they leave high school or university, and that's just not the fact. The thing you need to keep in mind is the world is always evolving. I mean, you have to be conscious of that. You have to have a certain amount of self-motivation. I mean, I think having good mentors to learn from is very important as well. And also the key fact is you need to be constantly educating yourself about how to set your life up, because things are constantly evolving. So where to shift, how to effectively protect yourself. So you need to be keeping yourself up to date. I mean, the thing I keep in my mind is really you need to work harder on your own life than you do at your day job. If you're working as hard on your own life as you are on your day job, you're going to set yourself up for success. So essentially, the biggest mistake that I think people make is that they don't put enough energy into creating the life that they want. They have an idea, but they don't really have a plan or anything like that. So I think you need to put focus and more energy into your life, because if you don't, what happens is you tend to just drift along, and at the end of that, you've got no plan, and you effectively end up at 65, no savings, no investments, and you pretty much are living on government pensions and things like that, and it's unsatisfactory. So really keeping up your education as we go through life to effectively be adaptable, because most people I see aren't adaptable, and you need to be constantly adapting, being able to shift and move as things in the broader world shift and move as well. There's definitely some big changes coming for us in the future that we really need to be aware of. I think it's just really the key takeaway from all this. Really wanted to show is the fact that the monetary system has actually physically changed over time. It hasn't been abrupt. It's been a gradual move, a gradual change, and we need to be constantly educating ourselves, keeping up with those things. So we don't necessarily want to be taking just the information that your mother or your father gave to you about money, about personal finances and those type of things. We need to actually be constantly evolving, constantly educating ourselves, because what worked for your parents in the 50s or the 60s or the 70s for that matter don't work these days. And pretty much, you know, the advice you got from your parents was, oh, save money and you'll be fine. But that just doesn't work anymore. You know, you want to be saving money, and then you want to be investing, because you need to be creating passive income to eventually pretty much become free from your job effectively. So I mean, really, that's your ideal. What you want to be doing is pretty much creating an income that's not attached to your job, and that sort of gives you the flexibility and the freedom to move ahead in your life. Thank you very much to those people who have hung around to the end of the video. Just a quick note, my mission here on the channel is to give you guys the tools and knowledge and confidence to take control of your own personal finances. I want to crack your financial sky. That's my dream, to give people the information, the knowledge to do that in their own personal life. Stick around, we've got some great content coming up. I really want to have fun with this whole thing, and most importantly, let's make some money together. Thanks guys, invest on.